Hello, I'm Catherine
And I'm Daniela,
and our podcast is all about
Spiritual Miracles. And we have a very special guest today, and we hope you enjoy our upcoming episode right now.
Thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited to speak to you. So, for anyone listening, I am an author. I've written 2 books. The book is called The Alchemy of Your Dreams and The Deliberate Dreamer's Journal. And I have an oracle deck coming out in 2025 and another book coming out in 2025. I really teach people how to work with their dreams and their intuition and symbols, and I teach people how to do that through the lens of both psychology and mysticism. So my work is really designed to help people discover their own pathways, and also to be able to do the work for themselves. So I really like to just guide people. Yes, so I'm a dream teacher. I teach people how to lucid dream, and I also teach people how to work with their dreams in a symbolic way. But I teach people how to do this. So, a lot of the time, say someone has a dream, like, they have a dream where they're eating an apple. A lot of people will go and they'll wake up in the morning and they'll Google, like, what does an apple mean in a dream, right? And I think a lot of us have done. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but to me, that isn't really how you can get the greatest guidance and wisdom out of your dreams. Dreaming, I come from the position that when we dream, we are actually dreaming with the non-physical part of ourselves, and that has many names. So some people call it the soul. Other people call it the light body or the dream body or the astral body. And then if people aren't into spirituality, then they'll say, well, we're dreaming, it's the mind. We're dealing with the interior of the mind. It's the psyche. And so after doing this for many years, and really I just don't feel that we are just our minds, I link the two together and I teach people how to recognize their dreams for the messages that they are. The dreaming mind, the part of us that dreams and understands dreaming, it's like having an interior guide that is wanting to speak with us nightly. And the more you begin to pay attention to the dreams, this is why I love what I do, because the more you pay attention to it, the easier it gets to understand messages, and also it gets easier in that it stops becoming conceptual. It really becomes something that you kind of prove to yourself, so if you're getting great guidance and you're seeing that guidance work in your waking life, you don't really need to prove that to anyone else, because it's so helpful. There's so many great examples of people who got great inspiration in their dreams and later went out and did amazing things just from having one dream that really kind of stood out to them. The idea for Google came from a dream. There have been lots of scientific studies or breakthroughs that have come through, like formulas that people will dream about, and then they'll receive the sort of missing piece through dreams. And I really think that often that's because our ego mind, our ego selves, our identity kind of goes to sleep when we fall asleep. So the bigger part of us, the non-physical part of us, has an opportunity to speak directly to us. But like anything, it really takes a lot of it takes a lot of awareness to be able to dream well. So for anyone listening, if you're dreaming and you're going to sleep, but you're not paying attention to how you're falling asleep, or you're scrolling on social media, say for like 2 hours before you fall asleep, or you're watching violent news or a violent TV program, that's not a very good way to help you get in touch with the dreaming world. So it really is a practice that can be very fruitful, but it does require a bit of practice and a bit of mindfulness around it. Well, so I love that we're talking about this, right? Because I feel like we are so interconnected. We are so interconnected as humanity, as a species, right? And I know that you and your sister are twins, and there's so many stories around twins, right? Like you can share a thought, you know how the other twin feels, and we take that, so many of us will just take that at face value. We're like, yes, that makes total sense. We see that, right? But to me, the truth of it is that we're actually all connected. We are all connected. If we really intently focus, like you and me, if we put the intention to meet each other in the dreaming, I think that's very possible and very doable. But a lot of the time, so many people have barriers to what they believe is possible, so they kind of dismiss things like this. But that to me is like, oh, that makes sense. You're really close with your sister. You would feel actually you would feel on a non-physical level that she would need some assistance, and vice versa, very likely. I hear wonderful stories from people actually all over the world where they'll tell me, I had a dream about someone that I hadn't thought about in 10 years, and they really were like distressed in my dream, and so I got hold of them, and it turned out that they got hold of them and they really needed help, and they managed to help them. Like one of the other dream teachers that I taught with on a conference, he shared a great story about a guy he went to college with, and he was actually lucid in the dream when he had these experiences, so it's slightly different to regular dreaming. And he was told that he needed to send $10,000 to this guy, but like on waking, he woke up and he was like, well, I haven't spoken to this guy in 15 years, like I don't even know where he is. And he kind of just fobbed it off for a little bit, and then the next time he was lucid, the same thing came up, and he was lucid pretty quickly after, so it wasn't like months, it was a couple of days anyway. And later he woke up and he spoke to his wife, and he was like, listen, we know in the lucid dream space this information is vital, it's really important, I'm going to get hold of him and I'm going to offer him the money. And it turned out that his friend from a very long time ago was in such a bad situation because his father had gotten ill, and there was some unexpected bill for exactly that amount of money that was just like wreaking havoc in his life. And he had hit like a rock bottom. And he lent him the money, and it ended up being okay, and later he paid him back. And so it's just amazing that when people begin to really pay attention, even if it's just through dreaming, or even if it's just through intuition and waking life, that non-physical, that unseen universe will really start to interact with us because we've become conscious. So it's an interesting space to play in. I think that when it comes to something like your neighbor, I think maybe that's a past life thing, but I also think we're just so interconnected. And I think if you are quite psychic and you're intuitive, that information is available to us, right? So your neighbor is actually probably someone that you connect with, right? Even if you're not really close friends, there's someone that you see often and they're part of your world. So I would say that that's maybe just generally psychic information. I definitely think we can access past life memories, and I think our dreaming, when we're in dreams, I think that happens quite a lot. And I think it's in the same way that we can access that information in waking life if we meditate very clearly. I think that past life information, from my experience, tends to come up if it's applicable to something that's going on in the present, right? Some form of information that you need to know that's important now. I often tell people, like, it's really alluring to want to explore that, and I think, go ahead. Who am I to say like what to do or what not to do? But I think when it organically comes up, there is such a state of resonance. I think a lot of people, I think naturally in our own lives we will have times where we don't dream, where sort of it feels like nothing very special happens, but actually we all dream every single night, whether we can remember our dreams or not. So there is some part of us that is always in contact with that non-physical essence, even if we can't remember it. I always tell people that if you really struggle to remember your dreams, like I worked with someone who couldn't remember their dreams. I think the last dream they remembered, it was like 11 years ago. And so one of the tips that I can offer is that if you're that person and you want to reconnect with your dreams, first set an intention that you are willing to do the work to connect with the dreaming world. And then take a piece of paper and a book and just write down whatever dream you can last remember. And in whatever shape or form that is, it doesn't have to be in full detail. Just try and remember one dream or two or three or four, how many ever you can think about. And that usually kicks out the block of not being able to remember dreams. Yes, I write a big chapter on this in my book. I don't use the word heaven, but I do think that is applicable. It is to me, it's like a non-physical state that we have access to, and it's a much higher state of consciousness, so it feels like heaven. That's the way I understand it. And our loved ones and our ancestors and our lineage, and even people we don't know who are just helpful guides from the spirit world, can definitively connect with us in our dreams. I share a lot of stories about that in my book, and I share practices that people can do to learn how to just open themselves up to that. And I think we naturally do that actually almost every single night. And I think the trick is remembering it accurately, and then also being focused in the practice, So if someone has to have the intention, the want to do that, right. So there are lots of ways to connect in that way. In the same way, in mediumship, it's waking day life where you're opening yourself up and you're allowing the non-physical part of you and their non-physical part to connect. And that just happens in waking life, right? In dreaming, it's much easier because the resistance is less. What I find so often is that I've also had my own experiences where, like, it's shocking, even if you want it, right? Like, you're like, wow, there's a part of you that still gets deeply shocked. And I think that's really natural. And I think that that with time, I find that it goes away less. It goes away more and more for me. But I love that also you shared that your grandmother came back and she took you again, and that is always available. That is the real connection, right? And what I really try and impart to the people who join my programs and read my books and everything, you can do this. You can do this, and there are guides and helpers on the other side that will help you to do that. And it goes from being like a concept or something that we kind of talk about, like, oh, I don't believe, I believe, and then it goes into like, well, I've had this very vivid, very real experience, which feels oftentimes more like tangible than sometimes here feels. It feels much clearer, right? And I think I love sharing that with people, because it kind of, for me, it goes, well, okay, you don't have to believe anybody anymore. You can literally have an experience yourself. And that to me is amazing. And then it's amazing when you start to hear and see exactly like what you were saying. Oh, there are multiple doors. Oh, there are these things that they're shared experiences of the same levels of, or places, let's say levels of consciousness within places, right? And so it's really exciting, and that just happened good. And I think people have experiences and they rationalize them away, or they will forget about them because it's too hard for the ego mind, the part of us that, like the identity that dies when the body dies. That's very hard for that part of us in a way to accept a bigger version, or at least that's what I can speak. I speak for myself there and the people that I don't have an office anymore. I used to be in practice for a long time. Everything's online, so it's www.athenalaz.com, and all the links to my books and website, my social media and stuff, it's all available on the website. There's research behind, not specifically linked to trauma, but that is definitively something that can happen, right? There was a great astral traveler, let's call it out of bodies teacher, and he did research and he shared how many people will make sense of an out-of-body experience by calling it a flying dream, right? They'll say, oh, I was flying, it felt like I was flying and I was exploring, and actually often what that is it's actually you're out of your body, but when you come back, your mind kind of makes sense of the process by saying that it is flying. So it's really food for thought for people who have done that. But just on a symbolic level, for people, if they have had trauma dreams or repetitive dreams or nightmares, there are lots of ways to work with these kind of dreams, and they're very helpful practices, and they actually will liberate the person from being stuck in that cycle. But it requires the dreamer to be able to really be ready to just look at what imagery is coming up, right? So with those kind of dreams, I really recommend that someone just guides them through the process, and it doesn't have to be this like long-winded psychotherapy process. It can be quick. It can be like one session to teach the process, and then if they need help along the way, that they're not alone, because trauma so often makes people feel like they are alone, right? So you're really not alone, and you don't have to be, and it doesn't need to be something that you experience over and over too. Thank you so much for having me. It was great to connect with you.
We hope you liked our video.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.